and to our wonderful mothers among us, happy Mother's Day. Well, what about Europe? It was a little bit of a different trip this time, as you'll see. But we feel that it went well, that it accomplished much of what we wanted to do. The team and I, that is John Gentry, his dad Randy, Philip Stuckey, Nathaniel Morrison and his wife Becky, and I had a Zoom meeting earlier this week where we evaluated how we felt things went, what could be improved, what kind of accomplishments we made, and also discussing future plans. And we'll look at those at the conclusion of the study. But as you know, this time it was a little bit different itinerary. For the first time, we were in Hungary to proclaim the gospel. This was my second trip to Budapest, which helps then to know the layout of the city a little bit. We went there because there are the remnants of a church in Budapest, 3 sisters and 1 elderly brother. And so we wanted to make contact with them and see if we could get them to come together again to begin to worship. More on that in a moment. But Hungary, in case you're not familiar with the layout there, is in the center of Eastern Europe. They've been in the news lately just because they had a big election, which has changed a lot of things in Hungary. And we spent our time in Budapest, the capital city. Now, we held 2 separate lectures there because Pest is actually a divided city, so to speak. It used to be 2 cities, Buda and Pest, because they're divided. The Danube River flows right down the middle of the city. But in 1873, those 2 towns were united, so Budapest is one city now with 2 different cultures, 2 different sides of the river. Buda is on the west side of the Danube. It's hilly, it's more upscale. Life is a little more relaxed there. Pest is on the eastern side of the Danube, and it is very flat. In fact, you can go up on the hill in Budapest and look out over the Pest side, and you can see forever. It is like the Great Plains. It's the beginning of the Central European steppe. So it is more vibrant on the Pest side. It's more of a student population, a younger population. There's a little more activity there. And so we held 2 different lectures there, as I mentioned. And we decided that we would go to probably the busiest place in Budapest to hand out our flyers. And that is this area that is called the Octagon. It's a major intersection of 2 of the big boulevards there in Budapest. And they call it the Octagon because you can see at each corner the buildings are flattened off. So you actually have a corner here and a corner here. So all told, around the intersection, there are 8 corners. So it's the Octagon. And since there were 8 of us, we divided into teams of 2 on each side, and then 1 each of us would handle each corner and just hand out the flyers. Here are some more pictures of the Octagon. Very busy place. It's where one of the metro underground subway lines meets, and so there are people coming up out of the tube and going down into it, and it's a lot of activity going on. Here's another picture. You can see very clearly how it is actually 8 corners there in the Octagon. We handed out these flyers, and we tried something a little bit different this time. As I mentioned, 2 different lectures. On the Pest side, we taught a lesson or a lecture series on what's the point. In other words, what is the meaning of life? Why are we all here? Where are we going? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? And we thought that would be a good topic to address on the Pest side with its younger population. Um, but we also wanted to do one on the Buddha side and make these available to whoever wanted to come, because they were on different days. So if you were living in Buddha and you couldn't make it to that one, but could come to Pest for that lecture, we made that available. The Buddha lecture was, can anyone really be forgiven? And so we dwelt on the nature of sin, the condition of humanity, the state we're in, and the solution that has been provided for that in Jesus Christ. What was different this time, and you probably mentioned this in our reports, the reports that I was sending to y'all, is we included a QR code on the flyers, both here and in Lithuania. Altogether, it stands right now, we got about 19 scans all told. One of those has resulted in a study, as I've mentioned in my reports, with an engineer who lives in Budapest. He's from Liberia, and he was raised a Roman Catholic but is not practicing, and John has been studying with him. He scanned the QR code, got on the website, asked for contact, and so John got in touch with him, and they are continuing to study. And he told John the reason he's not a practicing Catholic is he saw what goes on in the Catholic Church, and that turned him off, as is often the case. But when he got the flyer and he looked at it, and then got on the website and read what everything is all about, because the plan of salvation's there, he told John, I decided I better become more serious about my spiritual well-being. So he has no trouble with the existence of God and who Jesus is, but because of cultural differences, John says the study is proceeding slowly. But it's proceeding, and that's the important thing. Here is the other side, and there'll be a quiz after the sermon. You can show me what you've memorized of the Hungarian language here. Same thing, same QR code. I will say Hungarian is like Lithuanian in that it's a unique language. Nobody else anywhere speaks Magyar but the Hungarians. Just like nobody else anywhere speaks Lithuanian except the Lithuanians. And Magyar, at least Lithuanian, has Indo-European roots, so you can kind of relate to it a little bit in English, not with Hungarian. This is a Central Asian language, and so it is completely unique, and I can usually read a language even if I don't know what it says and kind of get the pronunciation down. I gave up on that with Hungarian. It is said to be the most difficult European language to try to learn. But no problem, we had interpreters and what have you. So this was our first lecture held in Pest at the Central European University. And so they even put it up on their little lecture board of what was going on that night. And there's ours. What gives life meaning? A public lecture and discussion. And so this was our class. Doesn't look like much, but as I said, this is a remnant of the church. And these are two of them. You can't really see it very well, but this is Zsuzsa, and that is the Hungarian equivalent for Susan or Susanna. And this is Edith. They both speak good English. Edith's English is excellent, in fact, so that was very helpful. And we did have one visitor as a result of the handouts. He scanned it too, found out what was going on. His name is Adam. He's a Pole. He was on his way back to Krakow, Poland, where he lives, and he's a construction engineer. This is John, Phil, Nathan, and John's dad, Randy, and they were all visiting with him after the lecture. And he said, well, I don't believe in God, but I feel like I need more information. So we commended him for that, open-minded. Be willing to explore, to study, and come to your own conclusion. So we told him that, if you scan that QR code and go to that website, you can get some more information. He seemed to be thankful for receiving that information. but we have not heard from him, but who knows? There's a planted seed. The second lecture on the Buddha side was attended by one of the other sisters. Here again is Zhuzha, here's Edith, and this is Clara. She was also one of the original members. She lives about 50 minutes to the west of Budapest, so it's not easy for her to get into town. But she did attend this lecture. Once again, there's Phil preaching, and Randy, Gentry, John, and Nathan and Becky Morrison. So we had a good QA afterwards. They talked with us about what we were discussing about can we be forgiven and the importance of Jesus. The best time, though, was that this was on Saturday. We did a Friday and a Saturday lecture. And then they got together with us at our flat for Sunday. Now, we didn't have a worship service as such because they don't constitute a church. They're just three members who are coming together, and we're trying to get them to begin worshiping and gathering as a church. But here's Nathan. He delivered a lesson on the importance of the church. Very appropriate. John sitting next to him. Here's Phil, Randy in the background, Zhuzha, Edith, her daughter Zita, and Clara. Now Zita is 15 years old. She has not been baptized, but she wanted to take a day off of school to come and help us distribute leaflets at the Octagon. And under the Hungarian system, I think it's 3 days a semester, a parent can pull their child out of school without supplying any reason. They can just say they're not going to be at school today. And Edith did that for Zita. So Zita was with us there at the Octagon handing out flyers. She was also very attentive. Here she is. Here's Becky Morrison in the background, Zhuzha again, Edith, and Clara. She was attentive to what Nathan had to say, looking at her Bible. She's a quiet young lady, but very personable. But she's excited about the Lord. And we kind of have thought, well, let me come to that in a second. After the lesson, we discussed with them if they would consider beginning to come together again on the Lord's Day and begin worshiping and working to become the church in Budapest. Edith was excited about that, all for it. Clara, who's kind of quiet, was, yeah, that would be good. Zhuzha at first didn't like the idea. Going back to 2012, that's when the Budapest church was in existence, well, 2008. 2012 was about the last time they met, so it's been 14 years since that church just kind of evaporated for lack of direction. They were abandoned, essentially. No one was going over there to help the church get established and build them up. So in the meantime, Zhuzha has begun attending a Lutheran church, and she indicated she likes that. And she's going to their theological school. But as we talked and discussed it with them, she did agree, okay, what we need to do is get together and discuss this. And we also need to include Jonas, who was not able to join us. He lives, when he takes public transportation, it's a 2-hour trip for him from north of Budapest down into the city, and he's 85 years old. So he was not able to come to be with us. But John is studying with Edith and Zita, or was studying with them before we went, so he could kind of build up a relationship and a rapport. And that is developing because John also has a study he's involved with through the Brethren in Belgium through Peter van der Bury. And you might remember him from some previous reports. He is a hard worker there in Eastern Belgium, trying to build up the kingdom and evangelizing and teaching. Edith and Zita have joined that Zoom class. And the main purpose behind that, why John encouraged him to do that, is they get to become familiar with some more Christians. That we're not the only ones in Europe. We're not isolated. There are other brethren out there. And so far as I know from what John had said, they are enjoying that study very much. Every August also there is a conference, a lectureship that's held in the Czech Republic. And John has been talking to Adit about going to that. It's stone's throw from Hungary. Czech, you might remember from the map, the Czech Republic is just north of Hungary, so that's not a very long drive even. But that would give them even more exposure. They would get to meet more Christians and become more involved. And so we'll see how that develops. But Zita is just a little quiet fire plug. She's just after it. So it's mainly John's effort. We're trying to encourage her to obey the gospel. We haven't really been able to talk to her, so we don't know why, being so zeroed in on the Lord and excited about being involved, she hasn't obeyed the gospel. But sometimes it takes someone a little while to put two and two together. But a lot of encouragement there. Really good group. So we did get to meet with them that Sunday. And then we went to Lithuania. We've all been there several times. This was my 7th trip now to Lithuania that y'all have enabled me to take. We flew into Vilnius, and from there we took the train to Kaunas. And that's 2 of the 3 churches. The third one, you've heard me mention Klaipėda out here on the coast. That's the 3rd and largest of the Lithuanian churches. It's the most established. I did get to meet one of their preachers on this trip while I was in Vilnius. The first Sunday I was there, he came in and preached because it had already been scheduled. So I got to meet him. Nice, gentle man and a gentleman. His Lithuanian is a little odd. It is heavily Russian accented with a lot of Russian idioms thrown in. And we found that out because we were trying to translate his lesson on glossa from Lithuanian to English, and a lot of it just was making no sense. And it's because one of the sisters and I talked about it afterwards. She said she thought it was because glossa couldn't pick up on all those Russian idioms and that heavy accent and try to render it into Lithuanian. So it was doing the best it could. But anyway, we went up to Kaunas and basically just repeated what we did last year. Our hotel is located on the other side of these buildings here, and it's only about a 10-minute walk away from this promenade here. You can see it's all pedestrians. No cars are allowed in there. And so we like this spot because there's a constant stream of people going by. We usually set up a central location with our little banner and some Bibles get ready to hand out, and then the rest of us will go up and down the promenade, which is about 2 miles long. A lot of shops. Way down here at the end is a big Catholic cathedral. At the other end, if you go down this way, you go under a main thoroughfare here and then out to a big old park that's on a peninsula where 2 of the major rivers, the Neris River and I can't remember the second one, they come together right there. So there's a big park with an ancient fortress there and the whole routine. And there are usually quite a few people in that park. And so we'll go up and down the promenade, or if we're at this central location, the people will walk by us and we'll just hand out flyers. We kind of lost count of what we handed out in Lithuania. It didn't seem to be as many as last year. The people, for some reason, weren't quite as receptive. We handed out over 600 flyers in Budapest, though. So they did get out there, and some of the people are scanning them, and some of them are still out there, so who knows what the Lord might do with that. But we were out here on the promenade, and then we held a Wednesday through Saturday lectureship. And so we started on Wednesday. John started off with greetings and discussing what we were going to do and describing our topics. These are two young people. This is Agua Santa, whom we'll see a little bit more of in a minute, and her boyfriend Marius. They translated for us. Agua Santa is 15, just like Zita. She is of Venezuelan heritage, a Lithuanian father and a Venezuelan mother. So she speaks Spanish and Lithuanian and German and a little bit of Russian. I think she's learning French right now. So she's multilingual and a very sharp young lady. She's not yet been baptized, but she's also involved too. She comes to services in Kaunas with her mom. And so in the lectures, most of the Kaunas church, as they often do, attended. Here's Phil and Nathan. Next to him is Becky. You can't see her. This is Randy, John's dad. And now is where you need to begin taking notes, because there'll be a quiz on the names afterwards. This is Jonas and Alma. They kind of got the church going there in Kaunas, and they own a daycare center, and they use that as the church's meeting place on the Lord's Day. This is Ilona. You can't see Gina behind there, but this is Tamara, Agua Santa's mom. She has a long story, which I won't take time to go through here, but she was a lawyer in Venezuela, a civil rights lawyer. She left that and moved a few years ago to Lithuania, and can't practice as a lawyer there because she does not have credentials for the European law system. And I don't know if she's going to try to work to get that. But she's very faithful. She's probably, I would say, the strongest and most knowledgeable member there in Kaunas. She understands the truth. She is strong in the faith, attends regularly as much as her really heavy work schedule allows, but she is a wonderful person. Here's another picture. Here's Gina that you didn't get to see. Here's Daina Ramuna, Neruna, and Gediminas, who is he's one of the main men in the congregation there. And so at the end of the lecture on Saturday afternoon, Tamara had us over to her flat with her daughter, Agua Santa, and her boyfriend, Marius, Nathan and Becky, and I was sitting at the end there, and made us this lunch. Invited us over, and it was just wonderful lunch. Delicious pork and beef with some veggies and delicious potatoes. It was a wonderful lunch. Allowed us to get to know them a little bit better and to build that relationship. And then they took us around the city after lunch and just went sightseeing with us. So that was a wonderful time, a really nice day. And it was wonderful that they were willing to do that. We even kind of bumped into Tamara later on in the day. There's a big square there in Kaunas where there's the town hall, a Catholic monastery, and then a Catholic cathedral, and a whole bunch of shops and restaurants. And Tamara works at one of those restaurants. Well, we were in that square in the evening, and here came Tamara. So we went and had a cup of coffee with her at a local coffee shop there. Got to spend a little more time with her. So very good time with them. Enjoyed it a lot. That Sunday, then, we got to meet with the church in Kaunas. Nathan repeated his lesson that he gave to the brethren in Budapest on the importance of the church, because Kaunas needs to hear that. One thing that I mentioned in my reports that you might remember, they've long had a reputation of having rather disorderly services, and we have addressed that. Well, during the lectureship, what we did was we looked at the New Testament churches, Rome, Thessalonica, the church in Antioch, the church at Corinth, and I ended the lectureship with the 7 churches of Asia, and the day before that, I preached on the church in Jerusalem, because after the Wednesday section of the lectureship, John and the rest of the gang, Randy and Phil, and they had to go back home because they had already been in Europe for 3 weeks, and they have their families, and they all 3 are preachers, and so they need to get back to their congregation. So Nathan and I finished it up. But Phil preached on the Corinthian church, especially out of 1 Corinthians, and dwelt on the point, especially in chapter 11, where Paul says, "Let all things be done decently and in order." Not supposed to have a bunch of pandemonium and what have you in the church. Well, after the lecture, we would have a Q&A period, and they acknowledged, yes, we have a problem with that. We are disorderly, and we need some help. How can we deal with that? So we just told them, you do what the scriptures say, and we'll help you to see that and to work on becoming a worship service according to the New Testament pattern. And that's what we have here. It was a very orderly service, because what will happen is they'll sing some songs, we'll have some prayers, a lesson will be presented, as Nathan did here, and then they would follow that up with Bible discussion, and then have the Lord's Supper. Well, it's during the Bible discussion that everything falls apart, because everyone starts speaking up. They'll even start arguing with each other. So the next week, I suggested to them, let's have the usual thing. We'll sing, have prayers, have a Bible presentation, then let's have the Lord's Supper, and after that, we can discuss. Because now we'll have an orderly worship, and once that's concluded, we can open to have Bible discussion, but we still need to have that in an orderly manner. And they did. This assembly was very orderly. But here again, here's whoops, back that up. Here's Alma and Jonas. Here's Naoma, Ilona again. This is Gediminas and his son and daughter-in-law. Gediminas' wife Indria. Here's Tamara, Diana, and Gina. And this looks like Marius. So the church was all gathered together, had a good lesson from Nathan, good discussion about it afterward. Then Nathan and Becky had to go home that following Wednesday. We went back out to Vilnius. They went back home, and for the next 2 Sundays, I alternated. I went to Vilnius in the morning, then Kaunas in the afternoon to work with both churches. And this is the meeting we had when I went back to Kaunas. Once again, you can see the major members. Here's Agua Santa with her mom, Tamara, Gediminas, his son and daughter-in-law, and his adopted daughter, Ingrida. But I want to focus on this particular young lady right here. This is Ilma. She came to the first Sunday that I went back solo to Kaunas. So this was the first time I got to meet her. Some background on this, Jonas and Alma for 25 years have had a prison ministry in Lithuania. And they regularly go up to a women's prison in Panevėžys to teach and visit with the women that are there. Well, they've had 5 or 6 baptisms among the women as a result of that work. And one of those baptisms was Ilma. Apparently, she is serving a 20-year sentence. I'm not sure exactly what the crime was. There are 2 sides to every story. Sometimes the legal system, just as here, is not quite fair. Be that what it may, she's serving a 20-year sentence. She's halfway through that. But apparently, because of her behavior, she is released 4 days a month to go anywhere she wants to go in the country. She has to have an ankle bracelet on. They track her. But when she's released like that, she comes to services. And so she was there that day, very attentive to the lesson and the discussion, involved in the worship. Bible's open. She's taking notes. Was very personable afterward. Personally came up to me, thanked me for the lesson, very appreciative and happy to be there. But she wasn't there the next week. So I asked Jonas and Alma, what's up with Ilma? How come she's not here this week? Maybe she wasn't able to be released. They said, no, she's not feeling well. She stayed in the prison because she's undergoing treatments for leukemia. She's only 38 years old, has a son, and is undergoing regular chemotherapy for leukemia. As a result of that, most of us being familiar with the effects of what chemotherapy does to you, she just can't come when she's undergoing those treatments. So pray for all of these brethren. This is Vladimir, by the way, who is a longtime member there, and Marian, who also is a longtime member. But keep them all in your prayers, and especially Ilma, as she fights a debilitating illness. So the final Saturday, the final weekend I was there, this was Saturday. This is Zeb. You might remember Zeb. He's Pakistani who is going to school in Vilnius. And we met him 2 years ago because John and Phil were handing out leaflets in a park for our lecture at that time. And Zeb came by and took a leaflet and an English Bible and said he would come to the lectureship, and he did. And since then, he's been studying with Kestutis, who is one of the longtime faithful Christians in Vilnius, to learn Lithuanian so he can stay in the country without a visitor's visa. And also, he's learning the gospel. He is a Muslim, but he's willing to listen and discuss what the Bible has to say. So we've had that contact ongoing. And so pray that he'll be of an attitude where he will continue to study and want to learn more about Christ, the prophet, and the final prophet, which we discussed when we had a cup of coffee. This is the caffeine dealer here. Actually, this is a chain of coffee shops in Lithuania, and the name is Caffeine. But when I first saw that several years ago, Ray remembers, wow, they're pretty blatant with that. Get your caffeine here. So you coffee drinkers, that's the place to go. But we had a good talk for a couple of hours about Jesus, about him being the final and only prophet, the only one who rose from the dead under his own power. No other founder of a major religion, including Mohammed, can make that claim. And so these are things that he can consider. So that was our trip. What about future plans? Well, I plan to start a weekly Zoom class with the brethren in Kaunas and Vilnius with real-time translation into Lithuanian and Russian from English, and being able to display both Lithuanian and Russian Bible text on the screen so they can just follow right along. I'm going to do that as soon as I can figure out how to get all that set up. I've been on a lot of Zoom meetings, but I've never hosted one, and I've never set one up with all of that going on. But I'm getting a little bit of help. So any of y'all, I know Ellen has already given me a little help on that, my little tech wizard back there. But if any of you techie types can offer some advice on that, that's appreciated. But as I mentioned, in that Zoom meeting that we had to evaluate the trip, Nathan and Becky and I discussed our plans for September. That's when we plan to go back to Lithuania. We had mentioned that to the brethren there, and both in Vilnius and in Kaunas, they were excited about that, invited us back, let us know when you're coming, we'll be ready. I can do that, being retired. I told them I can flex with that any way it goes. And I put out, y'all enable me to go there. So it's not an issue of having to raise support. With Becky and Nathan, it is. He's a preacher in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia. So he can only be gone for 2 weeks. And the church there, he's already taken one trip this year. They can only support him for one trip. But what's interesting is when we were discussing this with the brethren in Kaunas, particularly, he said, we would like to come back in September. But there are some things we have to work out. He said at that moment he got a text from an elder of a church that has supported them in the past, asking if he was going to go back to Tanzania, because or Tanzania, one of the two. That's where they have usually worked in Africa. He said, no, we're not going back to Tanzania this time. We're going to go to Lithuania. So the elder texted him and said, keep us in the loop, because we want to be involved. So it looks like they will have their support lined up. And so we're going to go back for 2 weeks. We're going to focus on Kaunas. We feel like right now they're the ones who need the most help. They're the ones who are most subject to outside pressure about what they're supposed to do and not to do. So we want to deal with that. But we are going to stop for a few days in Budapest and meet with the sisters there and encourage them. So Becky and Nathan will be there for about a week and a half in Lithuania. I'll stay afterwards, just like I did this time, and work with the churches for another couple of weeks. What we're going to do, and what we plan to do, is instead of a lectureship, Nathan and I will work with the men, and Becky and one sister that they know that wants to come with them will join with Becky to have a women's class and teach the women, which is a biggie, because nothing against women, but the church is predominantly women, as you noticed. There's not a lot of strong male leadership there. That's where the disorder comes from. It's among the women. So Becky and the sister that will come with them, hopefully, if the Lord wills, can help them with that aspect of what a church is supposed to be. So that's our future plans. The Lord willing, all of that will come about. As I mentioned, this was my 7th trip to Lithuania, my first to Budapest to do gospel work. And that's all because of you all. You make that possible. The Lord opened the door of opportunity there. Apparently, he saw that I have some ability to be able to do that work. And I go by the old axiom, A plus O equals R. Ability plus opportunity equals responsibility. If I have the ability and the Lord presents an opportunity, I feel it's my responsibility to do that to the best of my capabilities. He's granted me with health to be able to do that so far, and he has provided support and encouragement and prayers from you all. So this is our work, as I've always stated. I've always looked at it that way. It isn't me. I'm just out there talking and teaching. You're the ones who make it possible to do that according to the will of the Lord. So thank you for that. It's much appreciated that you give me the freedom to be flexible in teaching, where all the other team members are constrained by their duties here at home, limited time that they can spend in Europe. You all enable me to go beyond that and help to reinforce and continue to work with the churches after the rest of the team has to go home. So thank you for that. Please continue to pray for all the churches, Moldova and Hungary and Lithuania. I've just seen the Lord grow this, so something must be happening that's right in his sight. Started in Lithuania, then opportunities arose in Moldova, now Hungary. So I'm trying not to get spread too thin, but the Lord will work that out for us. So we never want to conclude a service without an invitation, and I appreciate Jason's song about the wonderful words of life. That's what it's all about over there, is proclaiming the wonderful words of life. what it means to be a Christian and how one becomes a Christian. If you're visiting us today and those are questions on your mind, how do I become a Christian? What's involved in all of that? What does the Bible say about what I need to do to become a Christian and what I need to do to live as a Christian? It's not difficult. It's very simple. It's not easy to live as a Christian, but it's not complicated. God's plan is very simple. And if you want to learn more about that, or if you know what the Bible says, and you want to submit to the Lord today as your Savior and your Master, we invite you to come forward and let us know what we can do to help you as we stand and sing.